Hey A&Pers, this is Dr. Jones checking in. This is A&P II Lab 1 Video 5 covering this big flat purple model of the endocrine system. There's more to the endocrine system that you will need to know on the slides, and in lecture test 2 we will go through the functions of the endocrine system in great detail. For now, let's talk about these. We're going to start with the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland right here on the model of the brain in A&P1, it was the advil hanging from the infundibulum, the stalk. So here you have the pituitary gland, and the proper term for the pituitary gland is the hypophysis, Hypophysis. And this is the infundibulum and the hypophysis. Now there are two parts of the hypophysis, the pituitary gland. The anterior pituitary gland, the anterior lobe, is the adenohypophysis, and it's this darker color. And then the lighter color is the posterior lobe of the pituitary gland, the neurohypophysis. And these terms, if you're following along, we're in lab assignment 3 on page 9. So pituitary gland, adenohypophysis, neurohypophysis, infundibulum, and pituitary gland. Okay, next in the neck, we have the thyroid gland, and here's a bigger view of the thyroid gland. It has two lobes connected by a narrow isthmus, and we can't see the thyroid follicles in here, so we'll have to look at that on the slide. The thyroid gland makes thyroid hormones, T3 and T4. Now, the pituitary gland makes 9 different hormones. The adenohypophysis makes 7, and the neurohypophysis releases 2 hormones that are actually made here in the hypothalamus, the ADH and OXT. They're not made at the neurohypophysis, they're released at the neurohypophysis. The hypothalamus also makes a whole bunch of regulating hormones, either releasing hormones or inhibiting hormones, and that controls which hormones are made and released by the adenohypophysis, the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland, what I sometimes call the AMP, mostly to be funny. So here is the thyroid gland. Now on the back of the thyroid gland are these 4 little bumps, and these are your parathyroid glands. So a swelling of the thyroid gland is called a goiter. And when they first started doing thyroidectomies to try and fix thyroid problems, they did not know about these 4 little bumps on the back, the parathyroid glands, and they removed them with the thyroids, and all the patients died. So it took them a while, but they figured it out, that these 4 little bumps on the back are parathyroid glands, they named them parathyroids, and that they help monitor your calcium levels, keep your blood calcium levels from going too low, because when your blood calcium levels go too low, both your skeletal muscles seize and your cardiac muscle cells cannot beat, so your heart can't beat, so you stop pumping blood. And the one skeletal muscle that we don't want to seize is the diaphragm. How do you spell it? D-I-A-P-H-R-A-G-M. That's right, the silent G counts, absolutely. And so I don't know exactly which happens first, if your heart stops beating or your diaphragm seizes up but not breathing, and your heart not beating are both not good. So there's no thymus on this model. If there were, it'd be right here on top of the heart in front of the great vessels. The thymus has an important function in the immune system, and it helps make lymphocytes. It's especially important in kids to help make those lymphocytes, which are a type of white blood cell, which do your specific immunity. And if it were here, it'd be right here. It's not though. As you get older, the function of the thymus gets less and less important. It secretes a group of hormones called thymosins. Okay, next on our big purple flat are these adrenal glands, called adrenal glands because they release adrenaline. They're also called suprarenal glands because they're superior to the kidneys, and the term for kidney is renal. So suprarenal is the anatomical position name, and adrenal is the physiological function name because they make adrenaline. So here's a bigger picture of the adrenal gland, and you can see the outer adrenal capsule, which is connective tissue, fibrous CT. These, along with the kidneys, are retroperitoneal. So this is a fibrous connective tissue capsule, adrenal capsule. And then the adrenal cortex is this yellow layer. And there are 3 different zones in this yellow layer that each make a different set of hormones. As a group, these hormones are called glucocorticoids because they're from the cortex. And the squishy gooey filling here, the inner part of the adrenal gland, is the adrenal medulla. And this is the part that, when activated by sympathetic neurons, will release adrenaline or noradrenaline, and those are now called epinephrine and norepinephrine. So the adrenal medulla releases E and NE, which stands for epinephrine and norepinephrine, which are just the new terms for adrenaline and noradrenaline. And the adrenal cortex, again, has 3 zones that you'll need to know for the slide, and those each release a different type of hormone that you do not need to know for lab, but you will need to know for lecture. Next, we have the pancreas, which is also retroperitoneal. And you can see the duct, because 99% of the pancreas is an exocrine gland, and it secretes digestive juices called pancreatic juice. That sounds right. And that's released into the duodenum, and it actually does the majority of your digestion in the small intestine. So it's super important. But we're talking about the 1% of the pancreas right now, which is the endocrine pancreas. And on the slide, it'll be these slightly lighter purple clumps surrounded by darker purple clumps. The darker purple are the pancreatic acini, the acinar cells, and they make the pancreatic juice that gets released from the pancreatic duct. But this lighter part is called a pancreatic islet. It used to be an islet of Langerhans, but of course we've changed all the names. So they're not named after people. The descriptive terms are nice though, because they kind of make more sense. So the pancreatic islet contains the islet cells. We will learn in lecture that there's 4 different hormones, 4 different types of cells, but for now we're just gonna, oh look, it's a pancreatic islet with islet cells. And again, you'll need to know these on the slides. So that was page 9. I'm gonna flip to page 10, and we have here the testes and the ovaries. So here are the testes and the ovaries. Here's a blown up picture of the testis. 1 testis, 2 testes. IS is singular, ES is plural. Just like 1 parenthesis and 2 parentheses. There's not much. Can't see the seminiferous tubules really. It's kind of, not really. Can't see the interstitial cells on here, so that you'll have to see in the slide. And the ovary, again, can't really see. Is there tertiary follicle? There's really not. Some oocytes maybe, but. So that we'll need to look at on the slide. So that's this overview of the endocrine system. Thanks as always for tuning in. This has been A&P II Lab 1 Video 5 on the endocrine. You will also need to learn these slides for the lab test. And the education must go on. Dr. J out.